everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create tables and insert records into those tables. So this is the most basic of basic tutorials you can go through. So to create tables, the first thing you're going to want to do is type create table. And as you can see in SQL Developer, it turns blue. That means this is like recognized as a function by Oracle. And then the table name comes after, which can be whatever table name you want. And I mean, if you're working for a company, you might need to abide by their naming orientation. But for our purposes, I'm just going to name this sample underscore table and then open parentheses. And then sometimes I like to do a couple of spaces and then close the parentheses and then do the semicolon immediately. All queries need to end with a semicolon. In this space here, this is where our column declarations and data type declarations are going to be. So a lot of sample tables that you see usually have something like employee ID. And so employee IDs are usually numbers. So we're going to assign that as an integer data type. And as you can see, this turns blue because it's recognized by Oracle. After the data type is declared, you do a comma. And then you go on to the next column name. So usually that'll be something like employee name. And since names, they're actual words, you're going to want it to do a varchar2. And in parentheses, I'm going to put 100. This indicates that I'm allocating a maximum of 100 characters to employee name. So anyone who's inserting data into this table, they can enter a name as long as it's less than 100 characters. So that should be everything. I know some names are ridiculously long, but that should be everything. Then comma. And then I'm going to go with employee job. And for this, I'm going to do car. And in parentheses, I'll put like 15. Some jobs have really long titles. So the difference between car and varchar is that car is a fixed amount. And so that's 15 characters that's being fixed for this column, meaning if I insert a record that's under 15 characters, that column will still allocate 15 characters worth of space for each record. So a lot of programmers and data analysts don't like using car when making tables because it indicates it's kind of a waste of space, whereas varchar is literally variable character. If I insert employee names under 100, let's say like 20, then that data, that space that's allocated to that specific record will be brought down to 20. If I do 30, then it'll be 30 and so on. So it's never allocated the full 100 characters unless you put a name in that's literally 100 characters. So that's my spiel. For testing purposes, I'm just going to leave this as car. And then I'll do one more column, and usually it'll be something like job description, so DESC. And I'm gonna some job descriptions are pretty long, so I'm gonna do varchar2 500. And then after that last column declaration and last column data type declaration, there doesn't need to be a comma, otherwise there will be an error. So I'm just gonna no comma goes here. I'm gonna close this space. And from before, there's that closed parentheses, which matches with this, and then semicolon. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Sample table created. So if I do select star from sample table, semicolon, this indicates I'm selecting all the data from sample table. And we don't have records in that table yet. So obviously it brought back the table, but it's completely blank. So I'm going to show you now how to insert records. So the syntax and code to do table insertions is insert into and then the table name sample underscore table. And there are kind of two ways to do this. This is the first way. So I'm going to define the column names, employee ID, employee name, employee job, and job underscore DESC. So you do insert into table name, in parentheses, the column names, and then values, which is a function. As you can see, it turns blue. values, open and close parentheses, semicolon. And so in these parentheses, this is where you write the actual values for each one of these. Employee ID is an integer, so I'm just going to do something arbitrary like 100. And then employee name is going to be a word, and anytime you're doing a word or varchar or character, these are all words, it needs to be in single quotes. So employee name, I'm going to put Matt, and it has to be in single quotes, comma. Employee job, I'm just going to put, I'm going to put like PhD. And again, it has to be in single quotes. Job description, single quotes, and I guess researcher. So going over the syntax again, insert into table name, and then the column names in parentheses, values, and then those specific values for those columns in parentheses. Integers, no single quotes, varchars and cars in single quotes. And so then close the parentheses and do a semicolon. So I'm going to run this and it'll say one row inserted. So when I select from the table again, I'll have one row. So another way to do this is insert into sample table. And if I know that I'm going to insert a record into each one of these columns, every column in the table, then I can skip the column declarations and just do insert into sample table values and then write all the records that I'm going to insert. It has to be a record for each column if you're not choosing to insert into just a few of the columns. It has, if you're doing it all of the columns, then you can skip defining them. So I'll do like 101 Sunil, programmer, and then SQL tables as the job description. Close parentheses, semicolon, insert it in one row inserted. So when I select from that table, it'll now have that record, even though I didn't define the columns. Now, you can define columns that are fewer than all the columns, obviously. You just have to make sure you write data for those specific columns. So if I just do employee ID and employee name, but I don't know someone's like job or description, then I do insert into sample table, those two columns, values, and now these records will have to be corresponding to employee ID and employee name. So I'll do like 102 and Rita, close parentheses, semicolon. So now when I select from that table, it'll have 102 and Rita, and since I didn't define the column names I didn't define these two column names in this code, and I didn't insert any values into those columns, it's now null and null. Also, if I put in more values than I did definitions for column names, it will error out. So if I tried to do this again, Rita, and I knew her job, and I put her job as like medical technologist in single quotes, and then parentheses, semicolon. So I put the value of medical technologist, but it's like, where is that going to? I haven't specified that I want to insert into employee job. I've only done that to employee ID and employee name. So when I run this, it'll error out too many values because you have employee ID, employee name, but also an employee job, but we haven't defined employee job. So when I select from table, it'll still be those three records because this one hasn't been inserted. Usually with employee ID, you define it as a primary key when creating the table, and that indicates that they should all be unique and they can be joined to other tables. I'll get into that in another video. I'll also make another video for part 2 with scripts that you can just install and then run in order to have sample tables just readily available, because doing all the creating and inserting can be a bit tedious. And then I'll also make another video on altering, updating, copying, and dropping tables and basic select queries. So thank you for watching.